Good morning. Breaking news developing. A showdown is unfolding, will likely come to a head tomorrow between President Donald Trump and the U.S. Appeals Court, which is denying the Justice Department's request to immediately reinstate the president's controversial travel ban. Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. Breaking news this morning. President Trump's immigration order is on hold. The court in San Francisco giving both sides until tomorrow to respond. What happens now? Former Attorney General Michael Mukasey is here. Plus, could this legal battle spell trouble for Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch? We're taking a look at what's in store as he prepares for confirmation hearings. Then Republicans moving forward on tax reform. Will their plan include a border tax? We'll talk to the man helping rewrite the nation's tax code. Congressman Kevin Brady is here as we look ahead on Sunday Morning Futures right now. And breaking early this morning, a federal appeals court in San Francisco has denied the Trump administration's request to reinstate Donald Trump's refugee and immigration travel ban immediately. That after a federal judge blocked Mr. Trump's executive order signed just over a week ago. The court ruling this morning means that refugees and travelers from the 7 predominantly Muslim nations, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, will be able to enter the country, at least until tomorrow. They had been barred by President Trump's order. Coming up, Senator Tom Tillis of the Judiciary and Armed Services Committee will react. But first, the latest from Rich Edson. He's at our Washington Bureau with new developments this morning. Rich, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Maria. And the federal court system will continue considering this case. In its ruling this morning, the Ninth Circuit Court requested both sides file responses tomorrow. In the meantime, the State Department says those with valid intact visas from those 7 countries may travel to the United States. President Trump claims the recent court rulings opens the U.S. border to, quote, very bad people. And on Fox News Sunday, Vice President Mike Pence also criticized the rulings.
We don't appoint judges to our district courts to conduct foreign policy or to make decisions about our national security. Under statutory law and under the Constitution, that authority belongs to the President of the United States.
Well, you know, we listened for months while Republicans said that Obama was issuing too many executive orders and exceeding his authority on executive orders. So, you know, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, and I think there is great concern. There has been a blizzard of executive orders and memoranda, some vague, some specific, some most probably unlawful.
This morning's ruling simply refused to overturn yesterday's court order halting the ban. U.S. District Judge James Robart of Seattle, an appointee of President George W. Bush, wrote in that ruling that those challenging the ban would likely succeed, and keeping the order in place while the courts consider the issue would cause irreparable harm. In its appeal, the Department of Justice wrote Robart's decision amounted to judicial second-guessing. The Ninth Circuit disagreed. This case continues there. Maria?
All right, Rich, thanks very much. We'll follow that. The court's denial only depends and deepens a potential battle between the administration and the courts, which could roll over into the confirmation of President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch. Joining me right now is Senator Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina. He is a member of the Judiciary and the Armed Services Committees and the Senate Republican Whip team. Sir, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
So I want to ask you your reaction to this court rejection as well as next steps and the impact to Neil Gorsuch. I also want to touch on the confirmation process next week. First, though, your reaction to this rejection by the court.
Well, I think that the administration has every right to do what they think they need to do to secure the homeland. We'll work that out in the courts. And in the meantime, we can work on some things in the executive order that may have been unintended consequences so that we can make sure the people coming to this nation are safe. But also those who have worked with us on the battlefield also have a place, safe haven.
You know, if a federal district court is blocking the president's order nationally, and then this federal appeals court is rejecting the appeal from the federal government, does this undermine President Trump's leadership and his efforts to secure the homeland?
I absolutely do think that they do. You have to understand the president is better informed on the threats to our homeland than anyone else on the face of the planet. And I think that his priorities are right-minded. He's trying to secure the homeland, and he needs this ability to look out at people coming to this country and being absolutely certain that they're safe if they're among us in the United States.
Do you think this is going to undermine Judge Gorsuch and his efforts during the confirmation hearings to come in the next 2 weeks?
No, I don't think so. I think Judge Gorsuch is just an incredibly qualified candidate, impeccable academic credentials, a litigator. He is the complete package. I fully expect he's going to get confirmed.
So tell us your thoughts in terms of next steps. I mean, it obviously looks like there's a showdown underway right here, and it could come to a head tomorrow morning since the court is telling both sides to respond by tomorrow.
Well, I think that they need to consult with the judge, the panel that's considering the executive order, and really take a look at the facts. The facts are dangerous people have entered into this country under various programs. We had Director Comey come before the Judiciary Committee and say that there were some 20 or so cases out of over 100 that they've investigated where people came to this nation under the asylee program who were later found to be guilty of hostile actions in the United States. So I think the president is right-minded in the way that he's going about protecting this nation, and I support it.
Meanwhile, Senator, then there's Iran. The president is battling a lot of issues this morning. First, obviously the federal court against this travel restriction ban, and then Iran on Saturday this weekend in an apparent complete defiance of the new sanctions imposed by the Trump administration. Iran held a military exercise to test its missile and radar systems. What should be the response?
I think the response has to be firm. I do think that Iran needs to be put on notice. They're a very dangerous nation that even after billions of dollars were provided to them by the Obama administration's Iran deal, they still chant death to America. This is not incidentally about the Iranian people. This is about the mullahs and the leadership of Iran who would like to have Israel and the United States cease to exist. And I'm glad that we have a president now that will put them on notice and let them know that they have to follow all of the agreements from the United Nations and the letter of the nuclear deal that I opposed, and to the extent that they don't, there should be a consequence.
But what is the consequence? I mean, how far would we be willing to go? Because the truth is, Senator, General Flynn said Iran should understand just last week they are officially on notice, and then Saturday they defied the sanctions. So,
well, I think that we need to take the advice for military advisors. We have a lot of insights into Iran, and we should take their advice on how to increase our physical presence there and do everything that we can to let Iran know, as long as they continue to be a hostile nation, that we'll have a firm response to that, whether it's economic sanctions, increased cooperation with our partners in the Middle East, increased physical presence on the seas, whatever's necessary to make it very clear to them that we're not going to allow a country who wants to end Israel, wants to end the United States and our way of life is going to be allowed to just act unilaterally. And
yeah.
I think the president and his advisors are right on this.
All right, Senator, take us behind the curtain for these hearings, the confirmation hearings. Incredible that we have yet to see a confirmation of Jeff Sessions yesterday. I'm looking at a list of all of the Senate committees looking to confirm, delayed until Tuesday on Linda McMahon, delayed until Tuesday on Stephen Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary, delayed Senate Judiciary Committee votes for Senator Jeff Sessions. A lot of delays here. When do you expect the president's team will be confirmed, and what's the holdup?
Well, the holdup is Senator Schumer, the minority leader, using all kinds of obstructionist tactics, which frankly are not going to work. We're prepared to work 24/7. You're going to see sessions that going into midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. If they want to actually use obstructionist tactics to burn out chamber time, we're all standing ready behind our leader, Mitch McConnell, to do what we have to do to get all of these nominees confirmed. And I'm very confident that every single one of them will be confirmed. And it's at the expense of all the other good things that we could be doing, fulfilling the promises that we made to the voters back in November. We need to put them on notice. Those who are obstructing us, people that are up in 2018, need to know we got to produce results.
So you think Jeff Sessions will be confirmed this upcoming week then?
I do believe that. I think that we're working on other nominations, but I have every confidence that he's going to be confirmed. Whether it's next week or the week after really depends on the obstructionist tactics of Senator Schumer and some on the left.
Wow. It's incredible that they're not listening to the people still after this election. Senator, good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks for the info. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria. Go Falcons.
Okay, go Falcons. Yeah, baby. Republican lawmakers, meanwhile, could be going back to the drawing board over their border tax proposal. Up next, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee on the changes that might be in store for your taxes. Follow me on Twitter at Maria Bartiromo at Sunday Futures. Let us know what you'd like to hear from Representative Kevin Brady. He's on decks next. Sunday Morning Futures. Back in a minute. Welcome back. Now, tax reform. House Republicans could be having second thoughts about their controversial plan to slap a so-called border adjustment tax on imports from Mexico. Many GOP lawmakers initially backed the idea as a way for Mexico to pay for a wall along the southern border, a key promise of President Trump during the campaign. It was also just one part of a larger plan to overhaul the tax code. But now the measure is facing some pushback by some American industries who say it will force them to raise prices. Congressman Kevin Brady is with me right now of Texas, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the House Deputy Whip. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me.
What has changed, Congressman, in terms of tax reform being a major priority? I feel like going into the election, many people expected we would see the tax plan that the president and the GOP has been promising and working on, and now Obamacare, the borders are really taking much of the oxygen in the room. Where does tax reform stand?
You know, I think it is still a high priority for this president. In fact, I know it certainly is for Republicans in Congress. You know, House Republicans have worked more than 5 years to get ready for this moment, really accelerate.
We're going to get back to Kevin Brady in a moment. We talked with Gary Cohn, the director of the White House National Economic Council, about these reforms last week. Listen to what Gary Cohn said he's working on, then we'll get back to Kevin Brady.
The first thing that we are going to attack is regulation over regulation. It's not just in the financial markets, it's in all markets. So today you're going to start seeing the beginning of some of our executive actions to roll back regulation in the financial services market.
Where are the most onerous regulations, Gary? Because I know ever since Dodd-Frank was signed into law, we were talking about the fact that they couldn't even explain what some of them, you know, the regulations were. They couldn't even write it. How do you execute if you can't even write it? So where's the most onerous that you think need to roll back?
Maria, there's many onerous parts. The biggest thing that we have to fix is that we have to get the United States banking system working again. We need to make capital available for small and medium-sized businesses and for entrepreneurs.
As it relates specifically to tax reform, do you think, Gary, that we will understand what the reform package looks like in the first 200 days and then perhaps look toward later in the year, second half of the year, to actually see the implementation?
Yeah, Maria, look, I don't know if it'll be 200 days, 100 days, 300 days. What I do know is we're all working to a very common objective, and everyone agrees on what the objective is. The objective is lower corporate taxes as a starting point, and then dealing with personal income taxes, especially for the lower earners.
Well, we're going to take a short break and then come back with more of Kevin Brady. We are talking about tax reform, when we might expect it. At this point, we are hearing that we will understand what the tax code package looks like in the first 200 days, but we will not see it implemented until later on in the year. Also ahead, former AG Michael Mukasey with the legal perspective on that travel ban and the challenges facing the administration. We're looking ahead right now on Sunday Morning Futures. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the House Deputy Whip, back with me. Congressman, sorry about that. For some reason, we lost the satellite
glad
reel
we connected.
Right there. But we are back, and I want to get your take on this border adjustment tax. Is that what's keeping things so debatable?
Yeah, so look, you started the segment with the question, are Republicans backing off? The answer is absolutely not, and here's why.
for years, American communities have been devastated as they watch these plants locally close, and those jobs get shipped off to Mexico and China, Canada, and other places. And there's a reason for it. Our current tax code favors foreign products over American products and drives these companies offshore. So we are determined to end that, and so we're going to have a tax code at the end of the day. Let me make this prediction. We're going to have a tax code at the end of the day that no longer favors foreign products over American products. We're going to end the tax on Made in America exports so we can compete and win anywhere in the world. And we're going to not just eliminate, we're going to obliterate any tax incentives to move American jobs overseas.
What other taxes are important to you and a priority to you to go away in this overall tax?
Thank you for asking that. It's got those issues have gotten a little lost here recently. One, we're proposing the lowest rates in modern history on job creators so they can invest more locally and in their future. Secondly, we propose to unleash business investment with, for the first time in history, unlimited immediate expensing of all that business investment in buildings, equipment, and software, and then a redesign of the international code so we can compete and win any in the world. We know we're going bold because we know to catch our competitors, China, Europe, Mexico, Canada, we have to go bold. We know these are big changes, but at the end of the day, we're going to leapfrog America back into the lead pack as the best place on the planet for that new job.
Yeah, look, I think all of the ideas and what you have been talking about for several months now have resonated with the American people. They want to see tax reform happen, and they certainly want to see lower taxes in a number of the items that you're putting out there. The question is, will it happen this year? I mean, with Obamacare and the repeal and replace front and center, and then securing the borders right there, when would you expect this legislation to go through?
So the answer is 2017, and we're on track to meet that goal. And your point about the American public getting excited, boy, it's not just about our local Main Street businesses and others finally being able to compete and win anywhere in the world. When families learn that we're proposing a tax code so fair and simple, 9 out of 10 will be able to file using a postcard system, they really get excited about what Republicans are proposing. So, look, we have this opportunity once in a generation, once in 30 years. This is the time to go bold and get it done.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Will we know what this package looks like within the first 200 days, even if we don't see implementation until the second half of the year? And will it be, are you hoping that it is retroactive to January 1, 2017?
And so two things. One, we've got the main elements of the Republican Built for Growth tax plan out there. We continue to invite ideas. We're honing it, making it better at every step. And so you've already seen the key elements out there. For timing, clearly this is still a high priority for the president. We know that. It certainly is for Republicans as well. So I'm pretty optimistic about 2017 if we just stay on the good, steady clip we're on right now.
All right, we will leave it there. Congressman, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Maria.
We appreciate it very much. Congressman Kevin Brady there. Meanwhile, brand new this morning, an appeals court denying President Trump and his Justice Department their request to reinstate his immigration travel ban after a federal judge halted it. So far, no reaction from the president this morning. The court is asking for responses by tomorrow from challengers of the ban and from the Justice Department. So a prelude to a potential battle between Mr. Trump's White House and the entire judicial system. Michael Mukasey is with me right now. He served as Attorney General under President George W. Bush. And Judge, it is always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction to this, this is a serious pushback, isn't it, to Donald Trump and his administration?
Well, it's serious pushback. On the other hand, it's something that remains to be settled when the dust settles, and the dust is still very much in the air. What's happened is a judge has ordered that the ban be, what he read as a ban, be stopped, so that people can enter now as they would before. The administration appealed for an emergency stay. The emergency stay was denied, but the court is going to consider whether a stay should be imposed nonetheless, and they've set a fairly brisk briefing schedule for that. That ends, I think, either tomorrow or Tuesday at 3 p.m.
I just wonder if, just the idea that a federal judge can just stop an executive order, does that undermine President Trump's ability?
Well, I don't think it undermines his ability. I think the question is whether he stopped it properly or not. There are situations where a judge can stop something that a president does. Judges stopped President Truman from nationalizing the steel industry, but there are situations where they can't. Here, the president was acting in his national security capacity. That's usually a plenary power. That is something that's generally not subject to close review. But it remains to be seen what a panel of the court is going to do after they get all the papers.
Look, we know that the confirmation process on many of the president's nominees has been delayed, a lot of stall tactics. Do you think this most recent pushback by the Federal Appeals Court is going to impact in any way the confirmation process of Judge Gorsuch?
No.
Why not?
Because it's got nothing to do with it. I think that the nomination process for Judge Gorsuch will go ahead as it would have before. The question is whether some Democratic members are going to, as they have indicated, require 60 votes. That is a veto-proof majority, and that is something that also remains to be seen. There are people who have suggested that it would be wiser of them not to do that, because even if Judge Gorsuch is confirmed, that won't change the makeup of the court ideologically. If you look at the court ideologically, Justice Scalia obviously was a conservative, a strict constructionist, an originalist. Judge Gorsuch is pretty much the same in the sense of his outlook, insofar as one can figure it out from his opinions.
And then, of course, the whole confirmation process, I don't have a lot of optimism based on what we're seeing. I mean, I was just reading a list to Tom Tillis. Senate Committee on Small Business votes on Linda McMahon, delayed until Tuesday. Senate Committee on Finance votes for Stephen Mnuchin, delayed until Tuesday. Senate Judiciary Committee votes on Senator Jeff Sessions' nomination for Attorney General, delayed as well. When do you expect this confirmation process to pick up speed?
Well, I think that a lot of this may be waiting on the vote on Linda DeVos as Education Secretary, because there are 2 Republican senators who've said that they're not going to vote for her, which means that even if all the rest hold, it would be a tie that would be broken by the Vice President. However, in order for it to be a tie, they need Senator Sessions' voting as a senator. If he gets confirmed and sworn in before that, then he won't be a senator anymore. So they may very well delay his vote until hers takes place.
So this is all about Betsy DeVos then? I mean, so they're holding back the Attorney General of the United States so that they could have their way with Betsy DeVos?
I think the folks who are decided to hold back on the vote for Attorney General are not the Democrats, but rather the Republicans, who want Senator Sessions to vote as a senator. That's their tactic, and that's perfectly legitimate. I see.
I understand. Okay, but there has been stall tactics.
The Democrats have required that every I be dotted, every T crossed. Yes, they have resorted at times to delay for delay's sake, it seems.
Do you think we'll see the confirmation of Jeff Sessions within the week?
I do. I certainly hope so. I think the Justice Department needs a confirmed Attorney General, somebody in place who can impose the standards that the administration wants imposed, and that's something that's difficult to do when you don't have a confirmed Attorney General in place.
Really fascinating start to President Trump's presidency. It's incredible, actually. Judge Mukasey, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Michael Mukasey there. Iran's military and fallout over the president's immigration order, meanwhile, creating a stir around the world, expected to keep Secretary of State Rex Tillerson busy in his first full week in office. Former Secretary of State Leon Panetta is next on that as we look ahead on Sunday Morning Futures. Back in a moment. This upcoming week, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will kick off his first full week on the job, and it comes after an incredible week for the Trump administration as it relates to foreign policy. From issuing new sanctions on Iran on Friday to the ongoing fallout over extreme vetting travel restrictions. We review and look ahead right now with former CIA Director and former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta. Secretary, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be with you, Maria.
I want to talk to you about a lot of things. Obviously, Iran and these new sanctions, as well as the restrictions on travel. He did talk a lot about securing the borders on the campaign trail. and he suggested that he would put some kind of a travel restriction in line from the countries that are seeing the worst terrorism. These are the 7 countries that he named in terms of restricting travel.
The question is whether you're going to do this right or you're going to do it wrong. And, you know, if you're president of the United States and you want to deal with providing better security for this country, then the key there is what he talked about in the campaign. It's not banning Muslims from coming into this country. It's basically improving the vetting process. We've got a 20-step process right now, goes on for 2 years. What's necessary is to improve the resources and the manpower in order to make sure that we are implementing tough vetting when it comes to those coming into this country. That ought to be the goal. But this travel order, very frankly, I think implemented a ban, implemented other steps that very frankly have created a lot of trouble for him in terms of its implementation. Well, that's the wrong way to do it.
What is the trouble? Look, we know that this is not a Muslim ban, and the president has said this is not a Muslim ban. There are 40 other countries that are of the Muslim faith that they're not on the list, but this is a list of countries, actually, that President Obama outlined as far as being very dangerous, where the terrorism is very prevalent, much more than anywhere else in the world.
That's where I disagree with you. The fact is, he is banning Muslims from certain countries. It is a ban. There's no other way to define it, but a ban on Muslims who are coming in from that country.
He said it's not a Muslim ban.
It isn't a question of going after terrorists. Well, yeah, but that's just words. The reality is that no Muslim can come in from those 7 countries, period. And that's based on nothing else but the fact that they're Muslim. And that's where I think he runs into problems with our Constitution and with the laws in this country.
You see, the skeptics on that would say, look, that's the kind of rhetoric that is actually stoking fear and stoking upset across the world, in particular in America. We know what just happened at UC Berkeley, and some people feel that it's because of the rhetoric on the left calling it a Muslim ban, you know, saying that Donald Trump is shooting from the hip, instead of basically looking at the realities of the world today and saying, how do you fix this? Extreme vetting is one way President Trump says is required.
Maria, I think that the problem here is that the president needed to take the time to really look at that executive order, to vet it properly. Instead, they rushed it out very quickly. It clearly had some problems. Even they recognized the problems in implementing this. And it created more trouble than dealing with the problem that he was facing. Look, you can do this right. We can protect this country. We have protected this country. We haven't had another 9/11 attack in this country because we have developed good counterterrorism operations and we have developed strong vetting approaches. What we've got to do is to increase the vetting process, to strengthen it, to provide money and manpower to get it done right. That's the way you deal with protecting this country. You don't deal with it by implementing some kind of across-the-board bans that very frankly raise a lot of legal issues that he's now dealing with. You cannot govern in this country as president through executive orders, okay? He criticized President Obama for using executive orders. But the key to doing it and doing it right is to basically vet it carefully, vet it through your agencies, and make decisions that don't include direct challenges to the values of this country and to what this country stands for.
Secretary Panetta, what's your thought on the Iran sanctions that were levied on Friday? Of course, Iran continues to break the UN Security Council with these ballistic missile tests, and that was the reason that General Flynn said we are now officially putting Iran on notice, and one day later, the president instituted new sanctions.
I think it's important to warn Iran when they do things like those missile tests. I think that's the right thing to do. I do think, too, that backing it up with sanctions probably makes sense. But the only point I would make here is that I would hope that the United States is not just doing this alone, but is doing it in conjunction with our other allies who were involved in dealing with Iran. Because the key to dealing with Iran was, frankly, that the international community agreed on sanctions that were harmful to their economy. That's the way we were able to truly be able to go to a table and deal with them.
Should we have gone to the table with Iran? I mean, look, on the campaign trail, Donald Trump said a lot that he's going to, dismantle or roll back the Iran deal. If he does consult with the other parties involved around the world, should the U.S. be pulling out of this Iran deal?
Whatever criticisms we have with the Iran deal, the fact is we have a deal. We've given our word. We ought to stand by our word, and we ought to implement that agreement. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't act against Iran when they take other steps to destabilize that region. But it does mean that we stand by our word, work with our allies to make sure we enforce this agreement, and that the Iranians are abiding by that agreement as well. That's the right way to do it.
Even as we were doing the deal, inking the bottom line, the head of Iran was saying death to America.
Yeah, look, Iran is not a friend. Iran is an adversary. But so is Russia. Russia's not a friend. Russia's an adversary. We've got to be tough with both of them. Not just with one of them, but with both of them.
Ambassador John Bolton said the sanctions on Russia haven't really done anything. Russia's doing what it wants anyway. Should Donald Trump roll back the sanctions against Russia?
Not at all. I think that'd be a terrible mistake. The only way you deal with Putin is from strength, not from weakness. If he thinks you're weak, he'll take advantage of it. And that's what he's doing in the Ukraine as we speak. It demands that we take tough action. I was very pleased that our UN ambassador made that clear. We have got to be tough with Russia. We've got to make clear that we are not going to allow them to take over another country. That's something, a lesson we should have learned a long time ago. And very frankly, we ought to be arming the Ukrainians, and we ought to be taking steps with NATO to make sure that Russia understands that they cannot cross that line in the Ukraine. That's the way you deal with Russia.
All right, we will leave it there. Secretary Panetta, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
All right, Maria.
We will see you soon. Secretary Leon Panetta joining us. All right, let's get a look at what's coming up. Top of the hour, media buzz. Howie Kurtz on deck. Howie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria. We've got an exclusive interview coming up with Kellyanne Conway, the president's counselor. She talks about administration leaks, the Supreme Court nomination, the rocky immigration rollout, the media's role in some of these protests, dealing with the press over a mistake that she made in an interview, and the negative way she would say, in which the Trump administration has been covered in the early days. That's coming up on Media Buzz.
All right, we will see in a little bit. Meanwhile, it could be the moment of truth on Capitol Hill with 4 cabinet nominees possibly facing their confirmation votes. Our panel's on deck next. We look ahead on Sunday Morning Futures with an all-star panel. Back in a moment. Welcome back. Big week for Capitol Hill this week as the Senate is expected to vote on 4 prospective cabinet members. I want to bring in our panel right here. Ed Rollins is former principal White House advisor to President Reagan. Jessica Tarlov is a Democratic pollster and strategist and senior director of research at Bustle.com. And Jack Brewer, former NFL player and CEO of the Brewer Group. Happy to have Jack here on the big game day. Good to see everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Good morning. So I was reading a list earlier, and the delays are just incredible in terms of these confirmation nominees. Ed Rollins, are we going to see Donald Trump's cabinet get together in the next 2 weeks, or what?
It's going to be slowed down. I mean, I think even Tillerson, who had 43 votes against him, which is the most in history any Secretary of State's ever had against him. And I think the fact that Democrats refused to even participate in the hearings on these final votes is a strategy was absurd. The judge explained very well the Sessions deal. We got to get Betsy DeVos through before he can put him up. But I think by the end of the week you'll have a couple of them more, and probably 2 weeks you'll have them all. But it's certainly slowed down the process, and I think one of the problems this White House is having is they're moving very, very quickly on a lot of different things, and it's a new and experienced staff, a president who doesn't quite understand all the constitutional realities of the Congress and the judicial system, but he's trying to do things quickly, and sometimes you make mistakes, and I think to a certain extent they've stumbled a little bit this week.
on the one hand, yeah, you try to do a lot and you make mistakes. But on the other hand, Jessica, Chuck Schumer is being obstructionist. I mean, he's
100%.
Right? I mean, he's calling the cabinet the swamp. He's, they're not even showing up. They didn't even show up for votes last week.
Well, they're trying to buy themselves more time. And Chuck Schumer has made it perfectly clear that he wants to hear what every nominee thinks about this travel ban, or as he would call it, a Muslim ban. So that's a top priority for them. Democrats aren't confused as to the fact that we don't have the numbers to stop this. If Jeff Sessions can vote on someone like Betsy DeVos, because we've had the 2 defections so far from the Republican side there. We know this is going to happen, but they do want to spend more time there and talking about, as Ed points out, issues with how Donald Trump is not only going through the process, but maybe his key understandings of how government works. When we have a tweet calling a judge a, quote, so-called judge, it certainly brought me back, and I'm sure everyone else on the panel, to when he went after Judge Curiel. Right? And said he couldn't be fair because of his Mexican heritage. No, this is not how we do business in America. And I understand why Democrats want to take more time, ask more questions, swamp or not swamp. We don't need to rush.
Look, I think you make a great point, and we're going to get into that in the next block. That so-called judge remark on Twitter is being talked about a lot this morning. People are upset about it. But Jack Brewer, my point is the American people voted in Donald Trump because they want work to get done. They want those campaign promises to be executed. And this obstructionism by the Democrats stopping the work to get done, they're, again, not listening to the people.
You're right. And you look back, you always go back to the Obama administration. There's a number of appointees that, the Republicans did not like, but you didn't see this type of obstruction during that time. And I wish that we could get to a point in this country where we could find enough balance to take a step back. Some of these issues are going to continue to be faced in our society. But, when Donald Trump comes out and says something like that about a judge, I think it causes the left to ignite even more. Yeah. And so he's really not helping that situation. You should take a step back before you make those comments and continue to just rash out. Take a step back, stay off of Twitter for 15 minutes, think about it, and then express yourself. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now in the world. But the whole immigration situation, I think, has really ignited a flame in the U.S. that we didn't want to have.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. The sad part is he had a superb Supreme Court judge. Judge Gorsuch is one of the great legal minds in the country, and will be a long-term, very effective judge. Yeah. And we should be talking about him this morning, but we're talking about all the rest of this stuff.
Exactly right. We're going to talk about this more after this short break. President Trump unleashed a Twitter tirade on that judge who blocked the immigration order. Our panel on that. We're looking ahead right now on Sunday Morning Future. We'll be right back. Welcome back. President Trump slamming Judge James Robart, who blocked his immigration order, blasting him on Twitter. This is what he said. The opinion of this so-called judge, which essentially takes law enforcement away from our country, is ridiculous and will be overturned. We're back with our panel. And Ed Rollins, this is the issue that a lot of people are talking about today because Donald Trump takes to Twitter and calls him so-called judge.
Well, first of all, he's a very reputable judge. He's a Republican. He was appointed by George W. Bush. You can take an issue with the Ninth Court of Appeals, which is now still over 2/3 Democrat and known as the left wing of the judicial system. But the reality is this judge himself made what he thinks is a sound decision, and we have a process where you can be overturned. It probably doesn't get overturned, though, because of the 4-4 court until you have a Supreme Court with 5 members. Yeah, and as it is today, if it ends up 4-4, that holds up. So you got to wait for Judge Gorsuch with maybe several months from now.
Well, there you go. It's all connected here. And it goes back to the immigration situation, Jack Brewer, that there's a big population, I guess, on the left who feel that this, travel restriction executive order was wrong-headed.
I think it was rash. He did it too soon. But at the same time, the way that the left is communicating this to the world is really my issue. Continue to call it a Muslim ban when you have 40 or 50 countries around the world that actually are Muslim-based countries that aren't included in this ban. And so it's our rhetoric. It's the way that we are putting our messaging out to the world. It really matters.
Well, that's what I talked to Secretary Panetta about, Jessica, because people are saying, look, if we keep hearing this kind of narrative from the left, that will stoke things like what we saw happen at UC Berkeley.
Absolutely. I understand that. Listen, I think both sides are too explosive. I think that happened. It happened throughout the campaign. We were all incredibly stressed out by it, and America was too. They were dying for it just to be over at this point with two unlikable candidates. I think the issue here is that Donald Trump campaigned on a Muslim ban. We heard from Rudy Giuliani that Donald Trump came to him and said, how do I make it legal? So the language actually out there came from the right. The left using it now, yes, it's only 7 countries. They were called out by the Obama administration to be investigated, not to be banned. But these are baby steps, and it's a slippery slope, and I think that that's the concern on the left. They're Muslim-majority countries. Yeah. There are other countries that are bigger producers of terrorists. Tunisia, for instance, is where we get the highest number of ISIS fighters. They're not on the list. Saudi Arabia, I know, an ally of ours, and also somewhere where Donald Trump has great business interests, also not on the list. Yeah. So I understand the concern here about the rhetoric and also the meat of this. There wouldn't be so many judges, reputable judges concerned about this if there wasn't an issue. And as Mike Pence said this morning, the judge has every right to block this, to slow it down, and let's see what's going on.
Yes. The key thing, the points that both of you made are very, very valid. We have to basically be very clear in our message. This is not a ban. This is basically a delaying process to where we can tighten up our borders. That's a very legitimate issue.
They don't want to hear that.
But Trump is exactly correct in trying to do that. The safety of this country, there is terrorism that have gotten in there. But you can't basically, there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. We're not banning Muslims. We're basically delaying people from those countries until we have a better vetting system. The Congress needs to get involved here and fix it.
But what about the refugee program then? I mean, that's so different than what's going on with this travel ban.
We know ISIS is trying to infiltrate the refugee program. I mean, we know what his motivation is. We got to jump real quick. Who's going to win the big game, Jack?
You know what? I'm going to go on a limb and pick Atlanta.
You picking Atlanta?
Yeah, hopefully Matt Ryan can bring one. That town and that franchise needs a championship.